Welcome to the Region Free Gamers podcast. Today we're grabbing our shovels, hopping in our Ferrari, and heading to City 17 to fight the Combine. Hello everyone, welcome to the Region Free Gamers podcast fluent in gaming. My name is Paul Romalo, and with me today, out of Miami, Florida, Mr. Ozzy Garcia.
Hey everybody, happy to be back.
Awesome. And out of Utrecht in the Netherlands, Geoff Ivats.
Hello, gentlemen.
Gentlemen. That's a polite way of
he has to
referring
sound
to
British.
There's a lot of other options
There's a clause in his contract that says that he must throw in at least two British term or slang or something, in each sentence that he says.
Oh, I'm glad we made that into a contract. I thought he was making an effort.
Oh, you also have a contract too, Paul. Just you don't know about it. You signed it when you were in New York. Well, you were enthralled with the stench and aroma of the subway. So
that I have to mention it every episode.
Yeah. But yeah, so Geoff has to say "shoved" every other sentence or so.
Yeah, and I'll say "bloody hell" as much as I can. Yeah. There you go.
Well, guys, we're taking it easy today. We're just kind of hanging out in the schoolyard. We're shooting the breeze about what we've been playing lately. Before we get to that, though, a big thank you to all our listeners for supporting us and getting in touch and spreading the word via social media. Like, I know I've said it before, but honestly, the thing we enjoy most about this whole endeavor is the social aspect. And, as much as we love chatting about games with each other, we probably wouldn't do it if there was nobody but us listening. So, big thank you to everybody for that. And also a big thank you as well to our patrons via Patreon. That whole thing has gone much better than we anticipated. And we've already started working on some extra content for you guys. So stay tuned for that. And again, thank you. If you're looking to throw us some extra support, Patreon's one way, or you can leave us a review or subscribe via your podcast app of choice. 5 stars, please. I don't want Ozzy to have any panic attacks
or aneurysms.
When we got that 1-star review, man, I never heard the end of it.
It was like Jay and Silent Bob, where I wanted to find that person that gave us the 1-star review and just like drop kicked him. Because it wasn't the 1-star review that bothered me. I mean, fine, you hate us, great, it's fine. But give us a reason why. Don't just throw up a 1-star review and just leave. Like, that's just cowardly. Just state your reasons. Say that we're pantsy. Say that my opinion on Ocarina of Time are terribly wrong. Whatever you want to say. Knock yourself out. Let me debate you, though. Let me have an opportunity to tell you how wrong you are, rather than just dashing out. That's just like, I don't know, like knocking on the door and then just leaving. It's schoolyard type. It's like childish. So yeah, I wasn't very happy.
Sorry, man.
But he's got over it. I think
I'm totally over it. Totally over it. It's not a big deal. I just sporadically go back to it every once in a while and I say, "Who are you?"
Oh, man.
I don't know what you were expecting with Patreon, Paul. I don't know what you were expecting with Patreon, but I was cautiously skeptical. I was just expecting a little bit of, comments about selling out. And I don't know. I wasn't very optimistic that our Patreon was going to go well. You certainly had a lot more optimism than I had. I thought that you were very sanguine about Patreon, and I was just like, we'll see. This might be the end of RFG as we know.
Wow, dude, I wasn't expecting so much pessimism. I just figured, I don't know. I just figured we toss it up there and see what happens, right? It's what I find bizarre about it is that I've had no shortage of people in my life who would actively want to get away from me. So the fact that people are donating to listen to me, it's absolutely bonkers.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing I've enjoyed the most, to be quite frank, is actually speaking with our backers, man. I mean, I've really enjoyed our Discord chat so far. I mean, we have I guess the point is that if you're supporting us via Patreon, you're actually giving us your hard-earned money, to do something like this, where we're just waking up on a Sunday just to chat about video games and shoot the breeze. You must, enjoy having these discussions and having these chats with us about just random stuff. So we know that the people that are there are good for our stupid, crazy opinions. So it's nice to chat with them, and it's nice to kind of have that instant feedback in a way. So it's kind of like, these are your loyal supporters, and these are the ones that, can give you a pretty unvarnished view of, how you guys are doing. So I think that that's one of the parts that I've enjoyed the most, and that I'm going to keep enjoying.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Geoff, actually, you know what, man? You were gone for a couple weeks there. How was that?
Yeah, I was actually in the UK. I braved the airport, getting on a plane, went across the channel, and went and visited the family. So it was really nice, because it's been 5 months now, 6 months since the outbreak. I lost a couple of holidays, unfortunately, but managed to go back and see the family, spent time with the parents, which was, great. Just seeing my mates face to face. I think that was like the biggest win for me. I didn't really do much else apart from work. Did the old work from home from another country, which was fun. Yeah, it was nice just to get a little bit of normality, because I think that's what me and the wife have been missing a bit. We've been, as I said, we lost our holidays, so we kind of didn't get that little recharge. But at least we've been able to go off and see our loved ones, and I think that's, for me, a 2020. Seeing my family is a win, let alone going to another country.
Yeah, no kidding. My mom does not want me going to Toronto. Like, I've offered,
really?
Many, I've offered enough times, and she's like, no, don't come here, right? We don't, I don't want you getting potentially infected and blah, 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 blah. And of course, she's understandably paranoid, right? Like, she's in her late 70s now. So that's kind of the situation there. But geez, man, like, I'm glad you were able to get out. How was the airport? I mean, it's funny, I work at an airport. I have no idea what's going on in there, because we're in our little cloistered tower looking down on everyone else, and we don't deign to go actually inside where the plebes are.
Yeah. Well, it's the most hilarious environment, really. So to get to the airport, I had to take a train. So public transport, you have to wear a mask. At the airport, you have to wear a mask. It's like one of the only places in Holland where you have to wear a mask. The government they're really undecided what they want to do with all of this. So then it's like a 40-minute train ride mask, 3 hours in the airport mask, and then it's all open. There's barely anyone in the airport. Super easy. Half the stuff is closed, but whatever. I can still get a sandwich and a drink.
Yeah.
And then you're all sat waiting to get on the plane. Everyone keeps distance. People are wearing a mask. And then suddenly they go, right, okay, we're going to board. And they board the plane. And you're sandwiched between everyone again. And you're like, well, okay, I just spent the last couple of hours doing my best to keep away from people. Now you're just shoving us all together. Okay, fine. But the most hilarious thing was they were giving out food. It's a 40-minute up and down flight. By the time you've reached, maximum altitude, you're already heading back down. You've already... You're already crossed over. You're already kind of over London. If you look out, you can normally see River Thames and Big Ben and all that kind of cool stuff. And then you're making your descent, and they're basically chucking bags of food at everyone. Everyone's taking down their masks, eating a bag of crisps and a biscuit, and then put their masks back up. And you're like,
exactly,
great.
If they put their mask back on, Geoff. I mean, I flew here from New York to Miami and Miami back, and it was exactly like that, except people just did not put their mask back on.
Forget it. Yeah.
And just the flight attendants had to come by and be like, hey, we may suspend you from ever flying in our airline again if you don't put your mask back on. That's basically the point to which it got, where they basically had to threaten suspension. Because people just weren't following orders. But I found it completely insane that they were just packing the flight. And some airlines are not doing that. Some airlines are just keeping, some seats separated. They're not filling the middle seat. American Airlines, they didn't give a shit. They were just like, fuck it. You're all sardines anyways. You're all numbers in our spreadsheets. So Yeah, I swore to not fly American again. But certainly your experience correlates to what my experience was.
Yeah.
Very interesting. If I had to boycott every airline that I've had a poor experience on, I would just never fly.
Yeah, you'd be there in Yukon forever.
Yeah, I'd be just stuck up here.
And you're definitely not going to be renting a car from Hertz or anyone else because they've all screwed you over at one point. Yeah.
Yes,
No
they
choice.
certainly have, Jeff. Thank you for reminding me.
Thank you for reminding me.
Sorry.
Hey man, so what have you been playing lately?
Too much. I was thinking about this. I need to talk about a couple of games in a good amount of content. And I was like, actually, what have I played? When you kind of go, actually, what have I been playing? Because this summer's just flying by. I've been trying to go out on my road bike a little more just to get out and do some exercise. But I'm thinking, okay, I need to have some games to talk about. And actually, I've mentioned in the last few episodes how I've managed to pick up a PC. That adequately plays modern games to a decent point, but it plays anything from 2018 back. It plays no problem. So obviously, what's the first thing I do is inspired by our King of Games 98 episodes. I went straight to the sequel of one of our finalists. So I played through Half-Life 2.
Yep.
Great.
And it's Does it hold up? I like to believe that it's still worth playing. It's still so unique in the world of FPSs that it still needs to be played. But a few things creeped in that I realized actually I didn't enjoy. I think I was saying how wonderful it is. It's a masterpiece to you guys. And whilst forgetting some of the things that I forgot niggled me.
Yeah.
Largely like the last chapter and how it just bit of an anticlimactic. You end up getting the gravity gun, or like you get the gun that you can basically pull people towards you and fire them off, and you're basically invincible for the last part. So that kind of that sort of casts a little shadow over it, but otherwise, what a fantastic game.
I'm glad it holds up, because like every once in a while, and I mean we encountered this so much with our 98 series, like you've got these games and you've got such fond memories of them, and then we have to go back and kind of critically analyze them, and it kind of hurts a little bit sometimes, going back and being like, oh, I guess this was fun then, but maybe not so much now.
Yeah.
I mean, I first played Half-Life 2 a while after the fact, and it was in the orange box on Xbox 360.
What a great compilation that was, by the way.
Oh, one of the best.
Unbelievable.
One of the best. I mean, and that's one of those titles that if we ever do a 2007 King of Games, that's one of those that are going to be on there, because that came out in 2007 as well. But yeah, so I had been meaning to play Half-Life 2, but of course I never had a powerful PC to play it. So I had to wait until I actually, had some sort of port that was able to actually faithfully execute Valve's vision. I know that it came out on the original Xbox, and that was kind of a miraculous port, to be quite frank.
It was decent,
but I never played that. I think in large part because I didn't want to get a diluted experience. I wanted to experience what everyone was talking about in its full glory. Now, granted, the Xbox 360 version is not quite up to par with the PC version, but it's not severely compromised to the point where you're getting an inferior experience at all. So I wanted to try it. I think the problem I have with Half-Life 2, and I'm not going to get into a rant, so don't worry about this. It's just that the gunplay feels a little bit loose. I was accustomed, I guess it's a fact that it's a 60 FPS game, when at the time I was used to 30 FPS, even in, my shooters, etc. So that the feel of the gunplay, if there's such a thing, just felt very different from the other games that were releasing around the time. And one of those was Modern Warfare, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, which has, even though it's 60 FPS, it has a very different feel from Half-Life. And so that kind of took me a little bit of getting used to. I think it's also the reticle. There's just something about the shooting in Half-Life that just doesn't quite jive with me. But I think that game, more than anything, I mean, it's the physics that make that game. I mean, that game was just a physics showcase. It was Valve saying, look, this is the future of games. This is what you can do with physics. You know, before Half-Life, an object was static. An object maybe could roll, maybe could do things, but to actually be able to interact with that object and to actually have it be part of the gameplay mechanics, I think that was what was truly revolutionary about Half-Life 2. And I think that to this day, you still see that influence in games nowadays, where when you have physics-based puzzle mechanics, all of that can be traced back to the gravity gun in Half-Life. All of that can be traced back to, you know, having to create your own platform in Half-Life. And that's one of the things that if you go back to it, that's a little bit weird, you know, the platforming in it, because you have to kind of make your own platform based on the physics of the game. That's the part where, to me, it kind of falls a little bit, because they were clearly trying to do something innovative and new. And it's very impressive, absolutely impressive. But if you go back to it right now, that's part of the thing that's some of the parts that actually strike me as a little bit, not as tightly, put together. And it's because they just give you this playground and you just have to kind of go with that and have to make the gameplay, you know, kind of work. So I don't know if that's your impression, Geoff, but all to say is Half-Life 2 is an extremely impressive game. I'm not going to shit on it. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed my time with it. I wish that they would actually finish the damn game. But that's, you know, an argument for another day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, episode 2 and 3 are equally fantastic add-ons and much shorter, thankfully, because I think Half-Life 2, one of my gripes was that it does go on maybe 1 or 2 chapters too long. There's a lot a lot of moments where, like, I love the world building that it does, like that Valve are able to do, where there's not a lot of narrative going on. There's not a lot of there's not a lot of exposition, but you really feel like you're following something and that the world is going on around you. And obviously this is still a 2005 game. So it's like, we need to kind of take it in its bubble, that if it was made today, there'd be a lot more NPCs, there'd be more stuff there would be a lot more going on in there. But there are moments where it really just kind of go, right, I'm repeating a lot of things here and there's not a lot happening. Yeah. And I think that I kind of go, well, not every game needs to be Modern Warfare. Not every game needs to be Michael Bay, big explosions, set pieces, your guys running off a roof.
Yeah, that's not quite fair to Modern Warfare. It's not quite fair to Modern Warfare. I'll go to bat for that game. How do you feel about the vehicle section? Because I feel like that's one of the sections where the game is at its weakest, actually.
Well, the buggy definitely has its moments where it's it's super frustrating. You end up getting stuck a lot of the time. The gun, like the cannon on the side of it, is very sporadic when it comes to the aiming. But like I appreciate how that changed a lot of the pacing at times. I didn't mind that level too much. Yeah,
it broke it out. And there's also the wind boat that you use. The boat that you have to traverse through the canals and stuff like that. That's another one of those.
Exactly.
And Geoff, you were mentioning, so you got to the end of the game and what you felt overpowered? Yeah,
pretty much. And there isn't, you get so used to having a final boss. You get so used to kind of going, right, I'm going to have to defeat something huge here. I mean, I've literally, so this weekend I just started playing Metroid Prime 2. And you're already confronted with bosses, boss. And you kind of think, okay, there's going to be something big here because you've got up to the citadel, the very top of this tower, and you go, right, something's going to kick off because there has to be something. And in the end, it's a super easy, I don't want to spoil it for people, I mean, it's a 15-year-old game, but you end up destroying the mechanism and you end up creating another catastrophe in which G-Man kind of pulls you out and says, right, you're needed for something else. But it just kind of ends.
Exactly, it just ends. Yeah,
okay.
That was my quirk. It was a very anticlimactic ending. But just to kind of go back to it, I mean, I remember, back in the day, I used to watch a lot of G4, which was the gaming channel back in the day, and I remember the pre-release hype for Half-Life 2. And when I saw the gameplay video of the there was the bomb that you could throw like bugs at people and it would just follow, people, and it would kind of eat them or whatever would happen.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of gameplay loop, I was really fascinated by it, and I said, I gotta have this game. There's also that portion, you remember, Geoff, where you're in the abandoned town. I think it's Ravenholm?
Ravenholm.
Or Ravenholm, yeah, Ravenholm. That is just a fantastic, setting.
A little slice of horror. It's nice, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, for sure. I mean, I thought that, that was the future of gaming, and I think it was. I mean, you had a ton of other physics-based games that came out of, Half-Life. So, yeah. I'm glad you got to play that again.
Indeed. I mean, it's something that I just wanted to make sure, go back to and go, right, is it as enjoyable as I found it back then? I'm not, an FPS gamer much these days, but I still appreciate how it is so different. Like I said, from your standard Call of Duties or what have you. But there are still moments that in that game that I don't think games have quite, like games tried, like you're saying about the physics. So you're thinking about the physics, but then there's two games that spring to mind when I think about game physics. One of them is Dark Souls, and the other is Gears of War, where once an enemy's defeated, physics are out the window.
Yeah, they run around like you push them around like a rag doll.
Exactly. So I think even in like not Uncharted, but like The Last of Us, where lots of objects have got the same weight and feel, and they kind of fly around the rooms when you hit them, and tables and chairs kind of go careening off sometimes. And so
it's kind of like the intrinsic weight value of the items are not factored in, in other games, whereas in Half-Life, everything has kind of its own intrinsic weight. And I think it's probably because a lot of these games use middleware. They don't necessarily take the time that Valve took in order to basically create a physics-based system that factored in the weight of every single item. So it's probably why we don't see it, as much.
I think as well, a lot of what is in Half-Life 2 in terms of the assets, it has a purpose. There's a reason for most of the stuff existing in that game, whereas you go to games now where we are just going to bombard every single environment with assets, so it feels more believable, it feels more realistic, or it feels like the characters or the players can actually feel like there's something of value, of worth. Whereas, when you go back to playing a PlayStation 2 or a GameCube game today, worlds feel very empty. Yeah.
So it sounds to me like you're saying that we can still learn some lessons from Half-Life 2.
Potentially. I mean, Valve are masters in the form of making games that not many people are able to replicate. Maybe every
once in a while they throw out a breadcrumb like a Half-Life
Alex. Yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but I like the idea. I like the feeling of going into a final level and just being completely overpowered.
Me too, man.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. I either want it to be punishingly difficult or just be completely overpowered. I don't want it to be kind of like vanilla, you know what I mean, walking in there.
Yeah.
And especially with a weapon like the gravity gun, oh my god, like what a great feeling.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. It's true. And there are parts of the game which require a lot of repetitive attempts. Yeah. Especially when you're facing up against those flying seekers. I think whatever they're called, like that can be pretty hard going if you're you need to be switched on. So there are moments where you do need to be pretty good at being a gamer, but maybe as you say, that last moment being overpowered, it's like, yeah, man, I'm fucking badass. So to deal with it. Yeah,
right on, man. And what else have you been playing?
So the other one I wanted to talk about, and something I'm actually looking forward to in the future, rather bizarrely, is Blade Runner, the Westward point and click adventure.
Nice.
Oh, so the reason why I played this is because I had a copy of it back in the late 90s and struggled severely. I just couldn't get it. At least with the LucasArts point and click games, I could always find my bungle my way through them and figure things out after a while. But Blade Runner just had me completely perplexed as to what the hell I had to do, what I was doing. Have either of you played Blade Runner?
No, dude. No. I'll be honest with you. I don't even think I've heard of it. When you said late 90s point and click, I'm like, what?
Yeah, no, it's
No?
kind of legendary because it had not been redistributed for a long time. And then I think one of those studios that specializes in reclaiming the properties that have been dormant for a long time or have been in licensing hell, they were able to pick it up and they redistributed it again on GOG.com. And it's one of those games that is widely hailed as one of the best adventure games, historically, and a very good sequel to the original Blade Runner. This is back before we had Blade Runner 2049. So I hear it's pretty fantastic, and it had a lot of the original cast, like Edward James Olmos and the like.
Yep, he's in there.
I mean, pretty much the only one that they didn't have was Harrison Ford.
Of course.
So it's pretty authentic, and one of those that I have been really wanting to get into. I actually have it on GOG.com, but I haven't actually played it because like I said, I don't play my games. But Geoff, how do you feel this time now that you revisited it?
Yeah, I'm glad that I've played it now that I'm an adult and I have the patience to play it, because it does require you to rethink how you normally play video games, even point-and-click adventure games. And the examples I guess I have of that is that your character, so you're essentially you're a Blade Runner, and it's set during the movie, because there are still elements where you can see that it's very, very closely tied to the movie storyline-wise, because you're still going after the same replicants. I think one of the replicants who gets retired by Harrison Ford's character, by Deckard, is in the game as well. So like it's all in that same time period. But it feels absolutely like genuine to the movie as well. But to the point I'm trying to make is you're able to change the attitude in which the detective is asking questions. So you're having to go, right, okay, how am I going to approach this individual? Because what happens is how you approach them completely determines how they obviously react, but then how it completely impacts the storyline and how you get through the game. And I think that when I first played it, I just didn't get that. So there were moments where say who I think is a replicant runs away, I'm like, oh, okay, what do I do now? I go through a guide and it's like, you need to have said this, this, and this to this person, because that's where you can then go forward. So it's like, but I didn't. I immediately wanted to give him a voice conf. I presume, Paul, you've at least seen the movie. I'm not talking like absolute nonsense when I say things.
You're talking absolute nonsense.
Okay.
This is one of my greatest shames is that I've never seen that movie. Yeah, I know.
Oh,
I've got it.
Okay.
Dude, I've had it downloaded forever, and I think even on Netflix it's going to be released soon. At least in Canada, our Netflix is different from the US, which I always find amusing. But no, I haven't seen it.
Okay.
Thank you, Geoff, by the way, for outing me. I was kind of hoping I could skip through this without having to admit that. So thank you very much.
Yeah, so Paul, I mean, as you probably figure, a replicant is kind of an android, and they are called replicants because they essentially look like humans. And some of them don't even know that they're replicants.
So the big thing is that they are used on the off-world colonies. So, mankind has gone into space, colonized other planets, and they have a 4-year lifespan, and they're meant to be incredibly hard-working, super strong androids.
Yeah.
But this group of them escape and go to Earth, where they think they'll be free, because Earth has turned into this wasteland. Into LA's on. There's all these fire towers. You'll see it. It's very visual. It's and even the book, "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?" Even the book kind of gives you that great vision as well. And so essentially, you're one of the detectives who are called Blade Runners. You have to go and find these and retire them, which means kill them, basically. So that's the aim of the game.
So do you have to run like empathy tests and the like, Geoff?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So with the voice conf, with the empathy test, you can unwittingly ask someone to do it immediately which is what I did. I did a couple of times, and as soon as someone goes, whoa, you think I'm an android? I'm out of here. And then like the character runs away, and you're like, right, I'm going to run after them. But then the next screen, they've disappeared because they've run away, right? So you
can basically play the game the wrong way and then just effectively lock yourself out of the game.
I think so. I think you'll get an ending,
but not a good one.
But not a potentially good one, no. And this is the beauty of this game, which is why there's so much replay value, is that pretty much, I mean, I don't know how many variables there are, but each gameplay, like all three of us could play this today and have wildly different experiences. And characters in the game, in my game, would be a replicant, but maybe Paul in yours won't be replicants, and vice versa.
Interesting. How are I was going to say, like, are there any kind of, like, or how many, perhaps, obtuse LucasArts puzzles are there? Or, is it that kind of game, or is it mostly dialogue-driven?
Yeah, so a lot of it is dialogue, and it's really more of you're more of a detective this time around. Mm-hmm. So you gather evidence, and you can, from chapter to chapter, you can miss evidence. So you miss key evidence that leads you to a replicant. So it's up to you to do all the investigating yourself. And you wouldn't have seen it then, Paul. There's a really bizarre scene in the movie where Harrison Ford's character investigates a photo.
Yeah.
And you have to do a lot of this in the game to uncover evidence. So if you miss key evidence in the photos that link you to, like, I'll try not to spoil it too much, but essentially with the technology, you're able to even see, like, almost around corners and reflections and all sorts of weird things in these images. If you miss stuff, then you won't get the right person to say the right thing to, and you can't go back to, like, that moment and kind of go, you have to go back to an old save, all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So it really depends on your efficiency or how you look at evidence and who you want to ask and when you want to ask it. Because there are some moments where an NPC will be on screen. If you don't take the opportunity to ask them the questions then, and you haven't built up the evidence to ask them the right questions, if you go out and come back, they might be gone, and that is your chance gone to interrogate them.
I'm not gonna lie, this sounds incredibly anxiety-inducing.
It's really fascinating. It's really fascinating, and I'm looking forward. So yeah, Ozzy, you mentioned it. So I took a quick look. It's a studio called Night Dive.
Yeah, Night Dive. They're the ones that do this. They reclaim System Shock, Turok, a bunch of other properties that have been lost. I know they were trying to revive No One Lives Forever, because that one's also been stuck in development, in licensing limbo. But ultimately, no one really knew what the hell they had, so they weren't able to do so. But I guess with Blade Runner, they were able to actually do it. So there's this list, essentially, of games that are in licensing hell that are like the most wanted. And I know that Blade Runner was kind of at the top. Now I guess No One Lives Forever is at the top. But Blade Runner, I'm glad that a new generation is getting to experience it, particularly now. Compared to 2049, Blade Runner 2049, I feel like Blade Runner has gotten a new lease on life. And I guess that's a question for you, Geoff. How do you feel this game, or how do you feel 2049 compares to this game? So you feel like this is a more apt vision to the original Blade Runner than 2049, or do you feel like they gel very well with each other?
No, I think they do gel well. This game is very much it's on its sleeve is the original Ridley Scott vision. That's where it is, with a little bit of the book thrown in, especially because it all kicks off because of a mass shooting in an animal shop, in a pet shop. And Paul, I'm sure you haven't read the book either, then, but then
bingo.
If Earth has become a wasteland, it means that animals have become the most precious commodity. And owning animals is a sign of real wealth. But obviously, because we've got androids who are pretty much like humans, and you need to do tests to find out if they're an android or a human, they've also done the same thing with animals.
Oh, wow.
And that isn't really in the movie, but it is in the book, because it's called Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Because do androids want to own an electric sheep? Because the main character does, because he sees it as like, this is how to elevate my status, is to own an animal, all this sort of stuff. It's a very, very different book to the movie, but they tie well together.
Nice.
But the 2049 movie, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. I love how it tied together with the original movie. I was a little bit skeptical, but I think it's all fits well together. The game, as I said, very clearly ties in with the Ridley Scott original movie, and that's fine. But 2049, I think it has a good place in that kind of little triangle of Blade Runner love.
Yeah, I also think it does honor to the original.
Yeah, I'm glad we agree, Paul. But I would say if there's anyone listening who loves Blade Runner and you haven't played the point and click game, if you haven't got a PC, don't worry about getting it on GOG. Wait for this remaster. I think it is coming out, but I'm sure it'll be out on the Switch. And you'll be able to get infinitely frustrated and have multiple saves to protect yourself when you play it through.
Yeah, nice. And so when's this remaster supposed to be coming out?
Yeah, it's the last time I saw anything. Maybe Ozzy, you've seen something else, but the last time I saw something, they pretty much just said, we're working on it. They put up some screenshots, which were very obviously from the original game. And if they are of the new game, I would say avoid it at all costs. It looks terrible. But like, it's so visually the game, it's still like pre-rendered backgrounds, and it's a lot of visuals which make it look amazing, but the character models are pretty bad, especially on a modern screen. So if they clean those up, I think it will still be a fine looking game.
Man, I can't say enough about games of that era with pre-rendered backgrounds. It really is like,
I think it should make a comeback, honestly.
Yeah, me too. Like I know we have a Final Fantasy VII remake, but if you want to play the original, it still looks great. It still looks great.
Yeah, they've stood the test of time better than most of their peers.
Yeah.
You can still go back to Resident Evil 2 or the Final Fantasy games, because the only thing is going to be the character models. Those are the only aspects that look dated, because everything else just looks pristine.
Yep.
So, well, I'll play Blade Runner at some point. Geoff, thank you for the recommendation.
Yeah, I probably won't, but I still appreciate the recommendation.
Yeah, no worries.
All right, cool guys. Let's take a break. When we come back, Ozzy's going to talk about what he's been playing. All right, guys, we're back. Ozzy, I need to hear what you've been playing lately.
Okay, it's funny because I haven't done a What Have You Been Playing for a while, I think, Paul. It's been
You avoid them. You avoid them.
Yeah, I avoid them.
Yeah,
I avoid them. Yeah,
like that
I remember...
black goo in Prometheus, but you just can't help going near it.
Yeah, exactly. Pushing close to it now. Don't get it in your eye. Don't get it in your eye.
Yeah. No, I mean, I remember you asking me once, Paul. It's like, what do you avoid though? What have you been playing? It's like, I just prefer, the more, I don't know, researched episodes better. I just, it's more to my liking. But I've learned to appreciate the fact that our audience kind of really digs the What Have You Been Playing episode, and they just kind of dig, us talking about the stuff that, we just happen to be interested in right now. That, I guess that's part of the same discussion that we were having, Paul, of being surprised that people are interested in talking about what we are interested in.
Yeah.
It's just a constant surprise. And the
funny thing is, sorry to interrupt you, but like the mirror image to that is constantly being surprised at having no clue what people like. None. I try to predict what people like. I'm an idiot. I have no idea.
It's happened to you and me both. We're always like, people are not going to dig that. And then we do it, and it's like, oh, that was the best episode ever. And I
know.
Really? You like that? I know Arnie was very surprised that the Punch-Out episode was great. I thought it was amazing.
It's great. But yeah.
You're always very self-critical of your own episodes. But in any event, I mean, I'm glad to be back on a What Have You Been Playing episode. The thing is, I recently moved, as you guys know, and I had all of my stuff in boxes, which was one of the most nerve-wracking moments of my life, bar none, to, entrust my entire collection to people that had no appreciation for what Ikaruga may be. That was very, very anxiety inducing, and it was 3 weeks of me waiting breathlessly for my shipment to arrive. But once it arrived, I started going through everything. And one of the things about moving, for all of it sucking, one of the things about it is that it forces you to re-explore all the stuff that you've accumulated and forgot about. So that's kind of what I've been doing. I've been testing stuff, putting things on the PlayStation 2 and checking out what games, I've gotten in the past that I never got around to actually testing. And so it's been a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But one of the things that I did put out, and now that I'm closer to my family here in Miami, I put out the VR because my brother wanted to test it. It's just been a fantastic experience because VR has now become my party trick. As it probably has for all of you.
Yeah.
And this wasn't even pushed by me. It was just my brother. My brother was a kind of guinea pig, and he was like, this is fucking amazing. And so whenever someone comes into the house, either my brother or my fiance, they're like, hey, why don't you try the VR? And whenever they try the VR, it's always indubitably going to be the shark expedition. And so the VR worlds. And it's become like a tradition here at Che Garcia, to put on the VR on someone, strap it on someone, and just film their reaction as they encounter a shark. So there have been a few good experiences with that. My stepbrother says that he's never going to go deep sea diving anymore because of that experience. And he kept kicking the shark. For those of you that don't know, you get dragged down in a cage, and you start seeing all this marine life. It's very beautiful. It's very serene. And then you encounter a nuclear submarine, and before you know it, there's a shark that's coming at you that rips apart your cage, and it really does look like. That.
Oh, yeah, it really shit, does dude! I thought the cage remained intact.
No, you're exposed.
Yeah. So it rips apart the door. It rips apart one of the four, walls of the cage. And so at that point, you're like completely exposed, and you're like, this is the end of me. So when people start feeling that, it becomes very visceral. So my stepbrother, he started kicking away the shark, and people like start grabbing things around them. Like my nephew, he started grabbing like a pillow, a cushion. And so he started like covering himself with the cushion, and he would just like look everywhere. And, but by far, and you guys know this, by far the most priceless reaction to VR. And this is probably up there in all of the YouTube videos I have ever seen, was my sister. 'Cause my sister has never experienced anything like this. She was born 1971. So, in Cuba, she never really played video games because they weren't around at the time. And so she doesn't really have that experience of, the immersion of video games. And so you strap this screen on her head, where she's seeing everything as if it's right there. And, you kind of wait and see what's going to happen when this person that has never experienced this, starts experiencing the sensations. And it's funny because we started recording and she was just very odd. She was trying to feel the jellyfish, and you could see her reaching out, trying to grab things, kind of going for that tactile sensation. And, I started looking at that and I'm like, I start getting worried because I'm just thinking, this is not going to end well. And so I'm filming all of this. I have the full video, and I turned to my brother several times and I'm like, should we do this? Like, are we okay with doing this? And my brother's like, yeah, we totally gotta do it. And I'm like, you're a fucking asshole. And so I turn the camera to him and I say, this is me recording him saying that we are gonna go ahead with this. So if anything happens, it's on both of us, not just me. And dude, when the shark starts appearing, she starts flipping the fuck out. Like, she literally starts screaming at the top of her lungs. And unexpectedly, she pees herself. She pees herself, like literally pees herself. And so she starts grabbing her crotch, because she's like the pee is flowing. And she's like, get me a dog pad. Get me a dog pad because I've peed myself. And here I am just laughing. My brother just like dashes out. He can't stop laughing at this. And I'm like, still filming. And I'm like, holy shit, it's real. She actually peed herself. And so I go and grab one of the dog pads. She grabs the dog pad. She still has it strapped on. By no way in hell I'm going to take it off at this point. And then she like literally puts the dog pad like a diaper in between her legs. And she just keeps, like a champ, like a trooper, she just keeps going at it, but just screaming everywhere. I wish I would have kept on filming after that, because what you guys don't see from that video that I sent you guys is that she stayed on it and she kept screaming at the top of her lungs at this. And it was just one of the most genuine moments that I have ever seen and I have ever experienced. And so I wanted to make it go viral, but honestly, if I put this on YouTube, it will. And I'm worried that she's going to lose her job because everyone's going to see her pee herself.
Yeah, poor woman. Yeah.
So I'd rather just avoid this. But maybe to her backers, I can send this video because it's just...
I'm sure she's
comedy gold, we can't, even for the backers.
And the thing was that, it felt like we were just playground kids just playing a joke on your siblings. My sister is 19 years older than me. So, we never had that kind of, sibling experience. But in this particular moment, the three siblings all felt like they were the same age, just playing jokes on each other. And I had a wonderful time. Not her. She actually had to go back home to change her pants. And dude, you should have seen this. I wish I would have taken a picture. She showed me her butt and it was just a huge, massive puddle running down her butt. Like, I actually verified that it was actual pee. So,
hey, let me ask you, did she leave the helmet on because she just didn't think in the moment to take it off, or was she like really game for it and being like, "This is
I think
this peeing myself thing is amazing. I don't want it to end."
Yeah. I think she was shell shocked, dude. Honestly, I think she was completely shell shocked. I don't think she was able to react at that moment.
Wow.
She just she really had no rational thinking at that point. She was just like in a fight or flight mentality at that point.
Oh my God.
It was just, she was standing up at this point. Like at this point, she was just like going everywhere, looking everywhere, and she was just like wiling out, man. So yeah, it's so that's been one of my experiences recently that I just had to put it in an episode because I want to record it for posterity and kind of give you guys the background to that video I sent you guys.
What would the next game be that you would get her to play, or did she, or was that it?
No, I can't do it anymore.
Ever again?
No, I can't do it anymore. Like honestly, I know my limits. I'm not that big of an asshole. No, look, I'm pretty sure that there are other experiences that she could see and
enjoy.
I could.
Hey man, fool her once, shame on you. Fool her twice, shame on her. Exactly. You can put it back on her.
Exactly. But no, that's one of the things that I wish with VR. I wish they had more of that, just more experiences for non-gamers. Because a lot of the games, you need to depend upon the DualShock or the Move controllers. You must have some degree of knowledge and background experience with games as a whole, with playing video games. For someone like my grandma or someone like my sister or even my mom, they don't really have that. You put a joystick in their hands and it's kind of like, what do you do with this thing? So I've been looking for other experiences like that. If our backers have any that they want to share with me, feel free to let me know so I can strap it back on my sister and make her experience this.
I guess, like a Beat Saber is relatively straightforward.
Yeah, no, it's just, it takes some degree of skill, it seems straightforward to you because you're so used to video games at this point.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, but it's, I do wish that there were more experiences in VR world. I wish there were just more things where you didn't have to do anything except move your head. Because I would totally pay for that just to like have people experience that. Because again, VR is such a game changer, man. I really do think that we've talked about it, but for a lot of people, like this is the first time they will experience video games. And it's like a whole new horizon being open to them. So I don't know. For me, I'm a little bit more skeptical of VR. It's funny because the same reason why I don't get like nauseous with VR is probably the same reason why I'm not as immersed with it. I don't quite feel like I'm there, so my brain doesn't really get that tricked into believing that it's real. So that's probably the reason why I don't get that nauseous when I'm playing VR at all. I mean, I actually never have. So I played Ace Combat 7 yesterday, and I tried that, and I really thought, look, if there's a game that's going to make me nauseous, it's this one. And it was perfectly fine, honestly. It was all good. Really thrilling experience. Paul, never play that because you will see your entrails, on on the floor.
It's too bad, man. I really want to play it. I love Ace Combat. I would like, and as soon as I heard it, I was like, oh yeah, man, Ace Combat 7 VR. But you're probably right, dude. I'll probably lose my lunch.
Yeah. No, the first thing I did was I tried a barrel roll. I got off. It was very impressive because you see the cockpit and you see everything around you. And my brother was like, try a barrel roll. And I did. And at that moment, for the first time, I felt a little bit like my brain was like, what are you doing, bro? But afterwards, I felt fine. And it's really immersive to have to look around trying to chase that plane that you're trying to get behind it to align a shot. You really do have to look everywhere in order to be able to make the turns, and there's just no substitute for that. So yeah, Paul, I really do wish that you would be able to try that, because considering how much you like Ace Combat, that would really be up your alley.
Yeah, too bad, man. I mean, you know what, look, I'll probably try it anyway. The ideal situation is that I try it at somebody else's house, because I'd be pretty chafed if I paid $30 for it. Even $30. I'm not going to buy it full price, obviously, but I'd be pretty chafed if I paid $30 for it, was able to play it for like literally 60 seconds. Because that's what happened with Drive Club, which I'll never stop talking about, is that it was $10 and I played it, dude, it was 60 seconds. And I'm like, oh my God, I need to get out of here now.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that, you could play the game, completely. I mean, the VR in Ace Combat 7 is just like a mini campaign. The actual main campaign is not VR. So, so it's just kind of like, it's just kind of like, a mini campaign, really. There's no other way to put it. So, if you like Ace Combat 7, then I think you definitely should go for it in any event. And maybe try the VR, and if it works, it works. But if it doesn't, then you still have the full game. I mean, it's pretty good on its own, and it has terrific graphics. I mean, so I guess all to say that I'm really excited about the future of VR. Hopefully Sony keeps supporting this. I know that a lot of listeners don't really care for VR, but I do think that there is a nice little niche that the genre can kind of build, itself. And we're all believers, I think, on this podcast. I think we all have VR. At some point, we're all going to play Star Trek Bridge Crew together. And
I can't wait, man. Dude, that game is hilarious. The floating hands, like it's all about the floating hands and the things you do with the floating hands, like pressing all the little buttons and shit. Oh my God.
Well, anyways, so to get out of VR land, because I know that we talk enough about it. I know Arnie is a big proselytizer of VR. I've been playing one of the games that I mentioned, that I was going over all the games that I had accumulated. And one of the games that I just popped in yesterday was Outrun 2, man. And I don't know if you guys have played Outrun 2, but it's just amazing. It's just completely amazing. And let me tell you, man, I played it, and the only thing that I thought to myself was like, God damn, I miss Sega. I mean, Sega's still out there. Sega's still doing great things. They're very successful still, and they're still doing, very good stuff. They're, we talk about Jaguars all the time, and that's Sega. But the particular feel of Outrun is something that is not seen in Sega anymore. I think that blue sky feel of just, having the pure joy of gaming just come through your screen. It's just something that I don't necessarily see that anymore in Sega. And I think that's mostly because, Yu Suzuki is not there anymore. And Yu Suzuki was one of the biggest drivers of this kind of feel. Yu Suzuki famously does not play video games himself, but he did make a number of them that were very excellent.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of emphasis on the feel of the game is something that is missing in Sega nowadays. And I miss it, So this game came out on the Xbox originally. I mean, the arcade one, was the full cabinet with the cockpit and everything, but it came out on the original Xbox, which goes to further prove that the Xbox was the Dreamcast too. So that was kind of like the last hurrah of the Dreamcast. So all the games that were, supposed to go to the Dreamcast, they ended up getting ported to the Xbox. And so Outrun 2 was one of these. And let me tell you, I am not the biggest fan of the original Outrun. And the reason for that is because I don't like old racing games because they have that problem where because it's not true 3D, you feel like the track is just kind of steering you. And I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about. You don't really feel like you're in control. You kind of go with the track. And that to me, maybe if I was young back then and this was my first experience with games, maybe I would feel differently, but I don't feel like Outrun ever overcomes that either. So the game, the interesting thing is that it was actually, I think, the Xbox port was developed by Sumo Digital, so shout out to the UK, Geoff.
Whoop, whoop.
And, what it does is it still gives you the Outrun feel, but making it much more accessible. And let me tell you that the feel of drifting is unparalleled in this game. There are few things more thrilling in a game than just weaving in and out of traffic sideways while your girlfriend hollers at you, with her hands up in the air like she just don't care. It's just pure bliss, man.
Yeah.
And the game, I don't know if you could have a game like this nowadays because people would just say, why would I pay $60 for a game that's just like one big track, in which you can go, down several segments. And if you go left, it's easier. And if you go right, it's harder. They would just say there's not enough meat in this bones. And I don't know if you could do this unless it was like a $20 digital game, which is a true shame because I really do think that this game is worth it. And particularly the Xbox version, it includes the original Outrun game, but also it has these missions where essentially, drift as long as possible, knock out as many cones as possible, or stay within the blue line. You basically had to obey orders from your girlfriend, which is pretty much real life. So it's very good. So I guess I've been talking too much, but I want to kick it back at you guys. I mean, have you played Outrun too?
No, dude, I haven't. Not even in the arcade. I mean, I didn't have an Xbox, so it's not something that I got around to. But I was watching a video of it yesterday because you mentioned it, and it really does look like it kind of captures the feel of it. It's kind of carefree, and it's really actually the drifting. Like when I started seeing the drifting, I was like, oh, okay, this is just kind of like a fun, long track arcade game with the checkpoints. And the checkpoints are fun too, man. It takes you back.
Yeah, absolutely. Geoff, you haven't played it either?
No, well, I got Outrun on the Switch. I think I've got it on the Mega Drive up behind me. And I played Coast to Coast a lot.
Oh, okay. So if you play Coast to Coast, you basically played this one.
This is like kind of a sequel, or Coast to Coast is like a sequel to Outrun 2, isn't it?
It's kind of like an update. It's like an update. It's like an expansion. It has 15 new tracks, but it also includes the tracks in Outrun 2. So Coast to Coast is like the definitive version. However, Coast to Coast on the Xbox is the most expensive Xbox game not named Steel Battalion.
I know, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah. So like, the CIB Outrun, Coast to Coast on the Xbox is like $210. So it's pretty expensive, even though I really want it. But it's also available on the PS2, available on the PSP. Yeah.
There's other ways to play that game. You don't need if you pick up a PlayStation and a copy of it for a fraction of that price.
Yeah. And what were your feelings on Coast to Coast?
I really enjoyed it. I think I can echo what you're saying. It's that feeling of, well, for me, the feeling of that arcade action with a little bit of extra meat on the bone to keep me coming back. I really loved Outrun on the Switch because it gives you those little quality of life improvements to keep you going back. Because it's a typical Sega arcade game from that era of, we are going to make this as tough as possible to keep getting your 100 yen coins. That's what we're going to do. Keep bringing those quarters in. And Outrun's tough. Man, that game is really hard. And Coast to Coast or Outrun 2, I remember it just suddenly became a little bit more accessible because it was obviously built with I think more. I know there was the arcade cabinet, but it felt like at the time there was more meat given to it to help with the console sales. Because indeed, like, how could you justify $60, €60, whatever, for an Outrun game? I think it is a big ask. But at the time, me and my mates, we all enjoyed playing that game. And I still would like to go back to it now and then. I don't have a copy of it anymore. Every so often I feel like picking up a copy and I always end up forgetting. So maybe this is a good reminder to go and get Coast to Coast again. Would we be good to have a newer version from Sega today? I mean, I just downloaded, was it Horizon Chase, the Top Gear style? Yeah, and that's been fun. Yeah. Like, that is a good 20-minute pick up and play, do some races, win some medals, and jump out. I would love to have a more modern Outrun version of that on my Switch. I think that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, I mean, Horizon Chase Turbo, it kind of really emulates and captures that feeling of Outrun. So if you need your Outrun itch, I would say probably pick that one up. Exactly. But it's just kind of a shame that Sega hasn't wanted to re-explore Outrun. I mean, Sega has just a treasure trove of IPs that they could just explore. And I think Outrun would be at the very top, I would say.
Interesting. Would you say, and you can say no to this because I'm going to ask you this off the top of your head, is there any other developer or publisher that kind of does recapture the Sega feeling a little bit?
Man, off the top of my head, it's kind of hard to say because...
It is, isn't it? Because, we mentioned Horizon Chase, but...
Yeah, I think it has to be in the indie scene, and it's not just one. Yeah. It's just particular one-off games that aim to recapture that feel. And I think that's probably where we're continuing to be headed. You know, we're going to have indie developers trying to recapture that moment or that sensation. So we'll see.
And you look at like a Streets of Rage 4, I think that's been a pretty good capture of a classic Sega series. I think that's been good. It's not an arcade game, obviously, but I feel like that's, like you say, indie scene seems to be where we can rely on it. I mean, Sega is still publishing and developing games that I'm enjoying, but indeed they are different. They are different.
And I agree to a certain degree with respect to Streets of Rage 4. I was not on that podcast talking about Streets of Rage 4. I think that game captures a lot of the things that made Streets of Rage good, but just as well, it doesn't capture things that I think are critical, to have an authentic Streets of Rage experience. And I think the main one being the music.
Bit of a letdown.
And so it's hit and miss, I think. But we don't need to get into Streets of Rage 4. So I don't know, Paul, if you want me to go for another one, or should I just?
Well, I just need to ask you one more thing. How have you mastered the drift now in Outrun 2?
I mean, the thing with Outrun and me is that I was never able to really get the feel for the drift now. And yesterday when I started playing on the Xbox, the first 3 races, I was not even drifting. I was just like trying to do my thing. Weaving out of the traffic and do my thing. But I was getting my ass handed to me. And so eventually I got, okay, you need to let go of the accelerator and you need to brake. And that gets you into the tail swipe. And dude, that was like a revelation. It's like the game opened up to me. It's like Valhalla and its doors just opened. And it was just like, okay, now you're going to feel fun. So I wouldn't say I've mastered it, but I feel pretty comfortable with it. Right now I need to get better at that move where you're kind of drifting to one side and you have the S turn and you need to, get the drift to the other side.
That's inertia drift.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I need to get better at right now. But I'm game for it. I'm game to keep going. Like yesterday I was playing and I was like, I could keep playing this, Who cares if there are things to do around the house? I just want to keep doing this. So yeah.
Well, dude, do one more. Go ahead, do one more. We got time.
Oh, okay.
If it sucks, I'll cut it.
Yeah, that's always the upside. No, and so the other game that's been in my life quite a bit recently has been Samurai Shodown 2019, and I've just kind of been wanting to talk with you guys about this because I want to make sure that I spread the good word about Samurai Shodown. I have been on a Neo Geo kick lately, as you guys know, because I got the cabinet. So I've been trying to re-explore all the fighters that I've missed. So as I mentioned over the chat, I've played a lot of King of Fighters 96. I've tried to catch up on a lot of the King of Fighters games, mostly from the Orochi saga.
Sure.
And Samurai Shodown's been one of those series that I've always appreciated from afar, but that I never really had the opportunity to play. And so eventually I did. I played Samurai Shodown 6, and I played a few of the old ones. But with Samurai Shodown, I mean, it became available in GameStop. I was able to get it for $7.99, which was mind blowing. And so I said, I have to do this. And dude, to my surprise, I mean, that game perfectly captures the feel of the old games. And one of the things that has struck me is how intuitive that game is. I think a lot of fighters, the big problem with them is the difficulty curve. And I know that some people have said that Samurai Shodown has a steep difficulty curve. But I think on like other fighting games where you have to learn how to do, like half circle, punch or stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
With Samurai Shodown, you don't really need that. You can basically get by with the basic buttons. You don't need to do special moves if you master the blocking. And you master the timing-based mechanics. And in order to prove this, I did a little experiment. I basically used my brother and my stepbrother to test out Samurai Shodown. They came over, and I was like, why don't you play this game? They were playing the cabinet King of Fighters 96, and they had gotten into it. And so I was like, why don't you try this game? And you could see them kind of struggling with understanding what it was that they had to do, and they were just kind of wildly going at each other. And I said, look, you have to play this game more methodical. You have to kind of time your hits. You have to block. You have to defend, and it's not about mashing buttons, because it's not going to get you anywhere. Because I started playing and I was just kind of handing their asses to them, and it was just like, look, I want to teach you, like, this is what you have to do. And dude, like, they started coming every night just to play Samurai Shodown, and eventually they mastered it, man. I mean, they got good at it, and they were able to capture that skill of, blocking at the right time and just going forward, going back, and getting the right shot in. And to me, it was just beauty, because I was able to, show this game to people that don't traditionally play games, and they were able to master it. And I think that should be commended, with respect to that game. So you always want to see a fighting game be accessible, because fighting games, it always feels like you need a certain degree of skill in order to make it look good, in order to make it look like you're actually doing something worthwhile. And Samurai Shodown, I mean, it captures it. And, I would just let them play, and I would hear from the room, like, the yells and the screams, like, oh my god, it's because, they basically almost, got each other, and then one of them, got ahead because he didn't block in time or whatever the case may be. And so I found it to be so fantastic, and that's my feel about the game. I don't play fighting games for the story. I don't know, that's just me. But I don't know anything about the online play, because I haven't done that. I've gone through the storyline. I've gone through the story mode, and it's nice. It looks nice. But I can just tell you that the engine, the feel, everything is perfectly executed. So I found myself very pleasantly surprised at this game.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you guys have played it.
I haven't, but this is what I've heard. People who are into their fighting games have been really surprised, and pleasantly surprised, I guess, by how solid and playable this game is. I dropped out of the fighting games back, would have been 10 odd years ago. The only one I really pick up and play still was the Fist of the North Star Sega one, which is just because I'm a Fist of the North Star fan. But
sure.
Yeah, this does sound like something that a non-pro like me could even enjoy, because a lot of what I don't enjoy much about fighting games now these days is I have to learn all these movesets, and I just want to play, man. I don't want to become that button mashing Blanca player, but
yeah,
I also I don't want to learn all these crazy timings to have to enjoy it.
That's the thing. That's where I think a game like Samurai Shodown shines the most, is with the lack of complex inputs and combo making. You just don't have to do that. It's a very different type of game. I would say it's easier to learn than your average fighting game, because your average fighting game, in order to be successful, you have to be able to learn complex input sequences, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think that there is that in Samurai Shodown. It's a much more strategic game.
Yeah, and by comparison, I've been playing Mark of the Wolves, and that's one of those games where you really need to master each character. And if you want to get ahead, you need to learn those moves. Which fantastic game. I freaking love Mark of the Wolves. But at the same time, it's a more advanced game. So yeah, it's been very enjoyable. I had a very good time with it. And so I look forward to SNK basically doing more games like this. As you know, this was the second game that SNK did as a developer, since they kind of relaunched their brand. And you could tell that this is a young development studio dealing with the programming. It's not extremely polished. There are a lot of things that you could clearly tell that the budget wasn't very high. But where it matters, it executes, excellently. So I think that, they're only going to get better. And I really just want a future where SNK is part of the conversation, man. That's ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what I'm hoping for.
I expect that they will be, just because King of Fighters 14 was so successful for them, and it's a great game. So I can't imagine them not continuing to publish. I don't know how Samurai Shodown did for them. Probably okay. Just because I didn't really hear very much about it afterwards. Hey, did you try the demo mode? I that's the one thing about it that they probably just shouldn't even have been included in the game, because there was so much negative publicity about it.
What is the demo mode?
Well, it's basically the AI kind of like records your moves, and then you can play against a dummy player based on your own play style.
No, didn't try that.
Okay,
so
well,
maybe I'll go.
Maybe that's for the best.
So at some point maybe I will, but I don't find a lot of enjoyment out of those things. I was the type of player that when I used to play Gran Turismo, I didn't care much for the B-spec mode, and in terms of teaching an AI to do things has never really been my thing. So
who has time for that anyway?
Yeah, I would say, look, the game is like $19.99 in most places right now. I suspect that it's probably going to get a little bit more expensive, so maybe it's one of those games that you want to pick up now. Just because I don't think it has sold exceedingly well. I think that there was a little bit of a mixed reception with some of the critical reviews at the time. So, but I would say give it a shot, because I found myself greatly enjoying the game.
Cool, man. Sweet. All right. Well, let's take another break. And when we come back, I'll talk about what I've been playing. All right, guys, we're back. And so yeah, we'll get to what I've been playing here. The first thing is something that it's been on my mind for a while now, for almost a year. And it's a game that won a shit ton of awards, but looked really different, and it's Disco Elysium.
Nice.
And I know you guys have heard of this, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I started playing it a few days ago, and I think I'm like 8 hours into it now, which obviously means that I like it, because, otherwise, A, I probably wouldn't be talking about it, and B, it'd be like an hour and it's like, all right, I'm out. It is a very, very different game, and I think that might be one of the reasons I like it so much. And honestly, Geoff, it sounds a lot like Blade Runner that you were talking about earlier, because you were talking about Blade Runner, and I'm like, oh wow, I'm going to talk about a game that sounds very, very much like this.
That jogs my memory that I think the Disco Elysium, the people cited Blade Runner, the game, as one of the influences, I think.
I think they did, yeah.
Maybe I'm speaking out of my ass here, but I vaguely recall seeing something along those lines.
No, I think you're right. I have to double check, because there are interviews with them where they kind of list some of the influences on the game. Like when I first loaded up Disco Elysium and started playing it, the very first thing I thought was Planescape Torment. immediately.
Yeah.
And sure enough, yeah, it's probably like their number one influence. So they talk about that, and they mentioned The Wire as well as an influence for it.
There we
And
go.
you're hitting up all those checklists.
I know, right? They're just all the all-stars, they're just checking it off. But funnily enough, unlike Planescape Torment, no combat at all. So that was a little bit weird for me, because what I've heard to it referred as is an RPG, but I would say it's more kind of like an evolution of the point and click than it is kind of like your conventional modern RPG. Because let's face it, the conventional modern RPG is combat. Everything focuses on the combat, really. At the end of the day, that's kind of like the nexus of the game.
Yep.
So, but doesn't hurt it though. Doesn't hurt it that there's no combat in it. It is very much dialogue driven. So basically, you kind of wake up. You're an amnesiac detective, which sounds tropey, and I guess it is, but it manages to not. Like once you get by that one trope, the rest of it sounds very original and not hackneyed, right? So you wake up and you talk to people and you kind of try to piece together who you are and what's going on. And then based on the dialogue tree, various things will happen. You'll unlock certain story paths, you'll unlock certain missions, and go from there. The other kind of main game mechanic is skill checks, like you would have in a regular tabletop role-playing game, right? So you would, for example, like there's one part in the game where you have to retrieve your police jacket, right? You don't know how you lost it because you were kind of like in a drunken stupor, but you see the police jacket on a railing on sort of like a balcony, right? And you have to jump to it. So you have a dexterity based skill. I can't remember what it was called. That's not the point. The point is the higher the skill, the higher chance you have of being able to get your jacket. Right. So you kind of roll the skill check, and if you succeed, you make it to the jacket, and if you don't, you chicken out, your partner makes fun of you, and then you have to wait until you can increase that ability before you can go back and try to get the jacket again. So there's about 24 different skills, I think so. Yeah, it's 24 different skills, and they're all it's so different, man. It's so different from your regular RPG. A lot of the skills will kind of have, even though you level them up and they have mostly positive effects, they also can have negative effects. So like, for example, empathy. It allows you, if you get higher levels of empathy, you can speak with people without offending them. You can kind of, feel for them, right? But it also can make you a little bit mentally unstable, right? Because you're too empathetic. Like if you, think about people from PETA, so to speak, right? Like very, very empathetic towards the animals, but I don't know if we would call the worst of them kind of mentally stable, right? Or for example, the suggestion skill would make it makes it easier for you to kind of like manipulate other people. You can suggest things to them, but at the same time, you kind of feel slimy and you hate yourself because you're such a manipulative piece of shit. So yeah, I've been having a lot of fun with it, man. The writing is absolutely. That was going to be my question. Yeah, it's absolutely phenomenal. The thing about this game is that I'm not going to say it was a novel first, but the driving force behind the game is a writer, a novelist, Robert Kurwitz. And basically what ended up happening was he wrote a novel, the name of which I can't remember, which actually kind of speaks to this whole story. The novel basically failed, and he was a bit depressed, and a friend of his was like, well, instead of working on a novel, why don't we just try a video game, right? Like, you can take all these ideas, we can take this imaginary world we've built up for the purpose of playing a role-playing game and make a video game out of it. And that's basically what they did, and now he's found the success that he was looking for, albeit not in the manner in which he originally intended. But that's kind of how the game came about. It was written first and then game second. And that really comes through in the game. The writing is just absolutely fantastic.
So what's the aim of the game? What's the?
How do you win the game?
Yeah, what's the achievement trophy? What's it called?
I can tell you how you lose, which was very sudden and unexpected. So how do you win? Basically, you kind of wake up and very quickly you find out that there has been a murder. Somebody has been murdered and hanged behind the hostel where you're staying.
That tends to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you meet up with your detective partner who has been waiting for you to wake up from your drunken stupor, and the goal of the game is to solve the murder. Now,
okay.
I don't know if that remains the goal as you progress through the story. I would say that I'm about a quarter of the way through the game, maybe a third. So it's possible that there is some like larger overarching mystery, as there tends to be with these kind of games. But at the very least, during the first game day of gameplay, it's mostly about this murder and solving the murder. As far as how you lose, you have two basic kind of health stats. You have your endurance, which is your physical endurance, and then you have your morale. It is the physical endurance you can kind of see coming, when there might be violence happening, and you can choose dialogue trees or you can make decisions to kind of avoid it, possibly. But let me tell you, man, if your morale is low, you're walking on eggshells in that game, because the slightest thing can make the main character depressed, and then he just gives up and quits the police force, and it's game over.
Does that feel like making it more gamey? Like it was necessary to make it more gamey? Do you feel like it actually fits within the game? Or is it just something that, okay, we needed to have it be a story, but also some sort of game elements here. So we're just going to throw this morale element and morale bar here as your kind of health bar.
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say that it doesn't fit, except that the detective is very, very depressed. He's very obviously depressed. He has substance abuse issues. And so it's not terribly surprising that when things come up, he just eventually gives up, because he's always hinting at that in the game. Like, he's always making these sardonic jokes about killing himself and otherwise, hating himself. So when you do reach a point in the game where he's reminded of, so there's like one point where you're reading a book and there's the name of a character in the book reminds him of someone from his past. I'm assuming it's his dead wife, because that seems to be kind of where it's going, but I don't really know for sure. Mm-hmm. In any case, this point in the book there's a character's name that reminds him of her, and then he's like, I can't do this anymore, and then you're out.
All right. Well, so next question. Is it fun?
That's what I was going to ask. Is it too much of a
I know,
bummer,
right? It sounds like a little bit of a slog. Well, I don't, and you know what, dude? I don't know what the answer is. Here's what I can tell you, okay? What I can tell you is that there are points in the game where I laugh out loud, because there are genuinely funnily written parts.
Yeah. And
there aren't that many parts where I'm like delighted, like I am with, the next game I'm going to talk about. But I keep on clicking. And I keep on clicking, and I keep on clicking, and I keep on talking to people, and I just keep going and going and going. So even though I don't have like this childlike wonder and delight at this game, I'm still playing it. And I'm going to keep playing it today. I think it's the story. I think I need to know what's going to happen here. It is very well written. And I think that's what's keeping me coming back. I was thinking about it last night. I'm like, I'm not really smiling a lot while I play it. It's not... But I think this is what it is. So it's a very interesting game in that regard. At the very least, it is certainly very, very different from anything I've played before. There aren't any, as far as I can tell, there aren't any like LucasArts puzzles in the game. It is strictly dialogue. And skill checks. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
So I haven't reached the point yet where I have felt stumped.
Would you say, Paul, is it worth full price?
I didn't buy it full price. I would say, it really depends on what you want out of a game, right? Like, if you have a checklist of things that you're looking for in a game to play, and your checklist includes something original that you haven't quite tried before, something extremely well written, and sort of like a point and click style, then you kind of have to pay full price for this game, because you're not going to get this experience anywhere else, right? This is a game that you probably haven't quite played before. So in that sense, it's worth full price. If it's not, if you didn't have that specific list of things you're looking for, then you get it on sale, because it does go on sale. It's not like Factorio, which, criminally never went on sale. And eventually, I had to get it as a gift, or else I was never going to get it.
Yeah, no, because I've been waiting for it to go down in price a little bit, just because I have such a huge backlog, which is, I just kind of tell myself, I can wait for it. I can wait for it to see if it drops down in price. But one of the biggest regrets of our conversation regarding the game of the year for 2019 was that I didn't get to play Disco Elysium. So, I want to fix that before the year is through at some point. Yeah. So I might just pick it up just to see. And as you say, since there's no combat, it seems like it's not necessarily, a pleasant experience, but not necessarily breezy, but like you could just kind of get sucked into it, into the dialogue kind of flow of it.
Yes,
so
yes.
Sounds to me like that's the case.
Yeah, that's exactly the case. I am pretty thoroughly sucked into it, and I still don't quite have my finger on why, but it's definitely there. And you're right, like it won too many Game of the Year awards that I was too curious. I was too curious. I had to see what the hubbub was about here. And it does go on sale. It'll go on sale. I think I got it for 25% off, which is enough of a sweet spot, for something, especially for something that was Game of the Year,
Yeah, exactly. What else have you been playing?
So the other thing is a game that took me a very long time to come around to. It's always been on the radar, and it really took our good buddy Dennis Strilly Vanilli to kind of push me and be like, yo, you got to play this game already. And that's Shovel Knight.
Hey! Fantastic game.
Yeah. Well, I had no idea, man. I had no idea it was that good. I ended up getting the treasure trove on the Switch, which nice. I think has like all the expansions and everything.
It's got all the DLC, yep.
Yeah, so I did not expect. I hadn't even seen videos of it at all. All I know is that it was kind of omnipresent. It was ubiquitous. Like everywhere I looked for the past, 3-4 years, there's been Shovel Knight everywhere. Mm-hmm. So I knew it was popular. I just didn't really know why. And then playing it, almost immediately, I'm like, oh my God, okay, I can see exactly why people enjoy this game. It is a delight, man, an absolute freaking delight. I can't tell you how many times I've been playing Shovel Knight, and I'm just kind of like, almost like clapping and, laughing, and just, it's joyous, man. It's joyous. Like, for those who don't know, and I imagine like almost everybody knows what it looks like now, it's basically a side scroller, and I would say the biggest influences that it takes from would be DuckTales on the NES, and then a sprinkling of Mega Man in there as well, because the platforming can be pretty difficult, much like a Mega Man. And it controls so beautifully. Everything is just kind of like obvious, you know what I mean? Like you go through a level and I don't really have to think too much. I can see almost immediately what I have to do, and then the question is like, can I do it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think the aesthetics are more Mega Man than DuckTales, but the mechanic of the shovel, they are pretty much DuckTales. But I think the beauty of Shovel Knight is how it manages to capture the NES feel while at the same time improving it to a level where you don't feel that it is cheap. Yes. It doesn't feel like a game that is just trying to recapture NES nostalgia by making it exceedingly hard. The game has a very gradual difficulty curve, and it's always teaching you. And every time you play it, you feel like, okay, if I messed up, it was my fault. If I died, it was because it was my fault. And it has so much character, man. All the different bosses, they all have their own character, and since the levels are themed around them, you just feel like their personalities are coming through in the levels themselves.
Yeah.
And it's a funny game. It's a charming, humorous game. The relationship between Shovel Knight and Shield Knight, and, it's kind of sweet, and
It really is.
yeah. And how he dreams about her. It also has a little bit of a sprinkling of Wario Land in it, weirdly enough, with the mechanic that you can actually destroy the save points instead of saving, and it's kind of like a risk-reward factor. I mean, that kind of took me back a little bit to Wario Land. But I think that's really the balance that the game strikes very well. It's being nostalgic while at the same time advancing the medium. That's, I don't think, something that anyone else, that not many have recaptured.
And it's funny, like, how they did it too. Like, one of the things that they did to kind of recapture that feeling was they limited the colors that they used strictly to the NES color palette. And it seems obvious once I found out about it, but while you're playing, you don't really notice. It just kind of feels very much like a very high caliber NES game. Like, the expressiveness of the sprites is just crazy. Like, the way everybody looks so different. Oh man, it is so cool. Like, even just like walking through the town, and there's the woman carrying the 2 buckets of water via the big wooden, the big wooden thing that you put on your shoulders.
That we all use. Us in Europe anyway. With our
And then you can
it's
jump
like,
on her.
It's like a Monty Python sketch, isn't it? But but you can jump on her. Sorry.
And you can jump on her to like reach another platform. And just like the expression on her face when you jump on her wooden water thing, like she suddenly starts like sweating and her face looks pained, but it looks friggin' hilarious, man.
Yeah.
They did such a great job with all the different characters in that game. It's crazy. And the sprites are very big too.
Yeah, it does feel like a game that could, I mean, it couldn't, but that it could have come out of 1991 or 1990, like a late stage NES game. And of course, it's impossible to have done a game like that, because even with all the limitations, it's still, it's still much more advanced than what you could have gotten in an NES. But it does feel authentic. And that's something that we old gamers are always looking for. I want the authentic experience of what I felt when I was playing this as a kid. And that's exactly how I feel playing Shovel Knight.
Yeah. So I put Shovel Knight in the same bracket as The Wire and Blade Runner.
Okay. Oh, there we go. We completed the trifecta on this episode.
I would tell people, you need to play this. You've got to play this. If you're a gamer, you've got to play this. Do you like crime drama? You've got to watch The Wire. Do you like sci-fi? You've got to watch Blade Runner. Like, if you like video games, you've got to play Shovel Knight. You've got to give it a go. There's a reason why it's been out on every single console that has existed since it was made. I'm surprised they haven't put it out on the Game Boy yet. That it's that versatile of a game. I really do believe that it is a game that we're going to get bored of seeing on every console, but it is worth playing at least once through. I've now done all the DLC as well, and I mean, maybe you guys know of a game that has taken the bosses and made them potentially better or just as good as the main character. King Knight's story and DLC is utterly fantastic. I think it is so much fun, and it shows how versatile that game is with the moves and with the way levels can be remade, and you can basically make it feel like a fresh new game. I think that's something that Yacht Games have just done an amazing achievement with this game. I could never speak about it highly enough.
Yeah, the post-game content in this game is just mind-blowing. I mean, they were supporting this game for 6 years. I think the original Shovel Knight came out in 2014.
Yeah.
And they've just kept, kicking out all the Kickstarter goals and adding new stuff to it. So essentially, you now have 4 campaigns that you can play for. You can play the original one. You can play, I think, Spectre Knight. You can play Plague Knight and King Knight. And I've played Spectre Knight and Plague Knight, and it's amazing because it's like a brand new game. So essentially you're getting like spin-offs of and variations of what you had played, but it feels wholly, immersive and new and fresh. So I think that, Paul, you may tire of it, after having played through the full campaign and maybe dabbling with some of the DLC, but it's a game that if you ever wanted to revisit it, you could just say, well, I'm going to play Plague Knight now. And that's just as well.
Yep.
Yeah, and I probably will. I'll probably finish the campaign. I'm very close to finishing it now. And I was thinking about doing one of the other ones afterwards, but I think what I'll end up doing, honestly, is just kind of saving those games for when I'm in a bad mood.
Yeah,
because
great idea.
Like that's what this game is for, man.
After you play Disco Elysium and you want to cut your own wrists, shovel night.
When your morale is very low, Paul, this is what's gonna get it back up.
Yeah.
Oh man,
how do you feel about the music, Paul? Because the music was one of the things that they actually did not abide to the 8-bit, limitations that they did so with the color palette, and so it was done by Jake Kaufman, who is perhaps the most popular kind of chiptune composer out there right now. He works a lot with WayForward, which, by the way, Jack Club Games, they're kind of exilees of WayForward.
Sean Velasco and
Yeah, and I actually think that, they did better than Shantae, for example. I love Shantae, but it's not anywhere near as good as Shovel Knight at all. But how do you feel about the music as a whole?
Overall, I think it's fairly phenomenal. What they did was they made the first level music absolutely fantastic. And then, and that kind of like draws you in, that one track. And I saw you could go there, Geoff. You probably know exactly which track I'm talking about.
It's playing in my head right now, yeah.
Yeah.
You have to play this in one of the cuts, in one of the breaks. You have to play Shovel Knight music, man.
Of course. It's 100% necessary. And what they did after that was make the music for every other level kind of consistent with the theme of that level. So you have one like real banger at the beginning, and then you have a bunch of other tracks that are also very good and very appropriate for their levels. It really, man, you're right. They didn't stay strict to the NES, so to speak, for the music, but it really has that NES feel to it. It just feels like an NES game that's leveled up a million times, really.
You know what happened to me with this game? It's that I played it on the 3DS because I wanted the 3D feel. And when I played it on the 3DS, one of the things that happens to me when I'm playing on a handheld is that my hands cramp up. And this is not a game. This is not a game that you can play if your hands cramp up, because you need to kind of be, fast reacting, to everything, that's happening around you. And if you suddenly don't have any strength on your hands because they're cramped, then, you're basically done. So that's why I put it down for a time. I got near the end. I haven't, I'm in the last level basically. And I never beat it because I just couldn't do it because my hands were just dying basically. So I don't know if I should just pick it up on the PS4 or something, and maybe, with a controller, it's just easier for me. But yeah, I do want to revisit it again. One of the things that I want to, kind of point out is that I am looking forward to seeing what Yacht Club Games does after this. They've been so focused on Shovel Knight that I am really excited about them moving on to the next thing.
Yeah, me too.
Because they're very talented, so I really am ready to, see what they can do beyond Shovel Knight.
Exactly.
Yeah, hopefully it's not a one-hit wonder situation. I can't imagine that it would be, though.
I don't think so. No. I do know that they're publishing that Ninja Gaiden-like game that looks... Huh? Not the Messenger. It's another one that's still in development. I forgot the name. It's called Cyber something. So they've gotten into publishing now with picking up this indie game done by one dude, and it looks very good. It looks excellent. I mean, it's not Shovel Knight, but it does look excellent. So at the very least, we're getting something from them, and they seem like they're picking up worthwhile projects to kind of amplify and give it a platform.
Yeah. They also published Gunvolt, Azure Striker Gunvolt for the 3DS.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Published, again, not developed, but...
Yeah.
And I don't know who published the Switch version of it, but that's another game that's worthwhile. I picked up Gunvolt for the 3DS some time ago. It's actually 2 games in one, and I finished the first game, and it was very, very enjoyable. It was like a it's like a better version of Mega Man 11. Honestly.
Yeah. No, I mean, and that's another studio that's doing very good things. Inti Creates. Inti Creates did the Bloodstained 2D spin-off, Curse of the Moon, I think it was called. And that one was essentially Castlevania 3 Redux. Yep. It really captured the feel perfectly. And I know they've been doing the Gunvolt games for a little bit. So definitely one of those 2D, pioneers, right now. There are not a lot of studios. There are a lot of 2D games, but there are not a lot of studios that are able to perfectly capture the feel of an old game. And I feel like Jack Club Games has that down.
Yeah, it happened. It's amazing too. Like, there are a ton of pixel art games too, but very few kind of like capture the feel of those old games. I guess that doesn't. I guess they don't necessarily have to, right? Pixel art doesn't necessarily have to be a callback. It doesn't have to take you back in time. It can just be its own now modern art form, if it, you know what I mean?
Yep.
But basically, we're looking at, I think, Shovel Knight and maybe Blazing Chrome. Those are the two that have really like put me in a time machine and sent me back.
Well, anything by the studio that did Blazing Chrome, they also have it down. I don't know how, but it's like sorcery. They have it down because before Blazing Chrome, they did Oniken. Oniken manages to capture that Ninja Gaiden feel perfectly. And before that, Odalis, which manages to capture Castlevania and Demon's Crest, weirdly enough, also as well, and Ghosts and Goblins. So that studio, I will follow whatever it is that they do. So not a ton of them, but the ones that do, they're just phenomenal.
Cool, man. And I'll mention a couple other things here as well, just a couple other games. Not so much games, but I need to talk about things that I've accomplished with games lately, because there have been a couple. There have been a couple of big ones. The first thing, ever since Arnie and I did the Punch-Out episode, I've slowly been going through Super Punch-Out, and I haven't beat it yet. But the other night, I did beat Super Macho Man, so I completed the 3 main circuits. Dude, beating Super Macho Man, I felt fantastic. Some of these old games that are very difficult, and like you get knocked down and then you get up again, and I don't want to turn this into a 1999 song.
There's a song in there.
Yeah. Gold.
Like, don't do it, Paul. Don't do it.
But there's something about just like getting owned over and over and over, and then finally overcoming that obstacle. And beating Super Macho Man, that was a fantastic feeling, let me tell you. So now I have to beat every single circuit, but I also have to go undefeated to unlock the special circuit, which is the final 3. I can't remember, 3 or 4 fighters. I don't know if I'm going to do that, but I feel like my cred will suffer if I don't. So I might...
All eyes are on you now, though. All eyes are on you, because now you put it on a podcast. So everyone knows that if you back out right now, then you're not worth, your weight in gold.
But I have to, man. Super Punch-Out it's just been a lot of fun to play. And then once I'm done with that, I'm gonna go finish the Wii Punch-Out, because we don't need to talk about Punch-Out that much. We just did a fucking episode on it. But those games are fun. The other thing as well, I went back to Etrian Odyssey Nexus, because obviously...
Surprise.
And at the end of every Etrian Odyssey game, there is a super boss. The super bosses are phenomenally difficult, extremely difficult, to the point where even I, a well-seasoned Etrian Odyssey player, has never beat one of the super bosses. I get to them and I'm like, I can't do this. Like, it's just too hard. But because Nexus was such a special game, I thought, you know what? I left that stone unturned. I have to go back. Marty. And so I went back, and about 30 tries later, I finally beat the super boss, the Abyssal Princess. There's one more boss after the Abyssal Princess in EO and Nexus, but I consider the Abyssal Princess to be like the one. And the fight took 95 turns. It took about an hour and a half.
Oh my God.
It was extremely tense. But oh my God, did I ever feel great when it was done. It was thank you Ozzy. I get very, very few like really great feelings like that from video games anymore. It was quite the challenge.
Well, it's a reason why people play Dark Souls, man.
Exactly. There really is, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny, like I actually saw videos afterwards of people beating this boss with like the nice thing about EO, and I don't want to harp on it too much. I know you guys are tired of me talking about it, but you don't have to do it one way. You know, you can put together a party that is your style and still manage to beat this super boss. And that wasn't always true of previous Etrian Odyssey games, but this one, you see, I went online, I went onto Reddit, and there's people talking about all the different kinds of parties they used and so on. It is, man, I love that game so much. That is all.
That is all. But let me ask you, in terms of life achievements, have you actually gotten through all the Trails of Cold Steel games already?
Oh, goodness, no.
Okay.
There's 4. The 4th one hasn't even been released yet. So we're not quite there yet.
Okay, and have you gotten through the 3 that have been released?
Yeah, there are 3. I finished the first 2. The 3rd one, I don't know, man. Probably next year.
At some point.
You need a break between those. You can't just go straight through them. They're so dense. So
yeah.
You need time to digest that meal.
All right.
Cool, man. Well, I think that about covers it, eh? Like, I'm done. You guys are done. So, again, everybody, thanks so much for listening. These episodes for us are a lot of fun. They're very impromptu. Like, they're kind of impromptu in a way. And we're really glad that you enjoy them because we enjoy doing them too. Much like we do with all of our episodes. But these are always a little bit different, a little bit more casual. And so we appreciate that people enjoy them. And don't forget, subscribe, rate, review. And if you're interested, regionfreegamers.com and patreon.com/regionfreegamers. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you.